The receptionist glanced at the woman sitting quietly in the lobby for the third time and rolled her eyes. Through the glass walls of the executive boardroom, a group of senior executives laughed loudly, sipping imported coffee and reviewing presentations meant for a meeting they believed would change their company forever. None of them knew that the elegant black woman seated outside in a deep blue suit was not an applicant, not a visitor, and certainly not someone they could afford to ignore. She had been waiting for 40 long minutes in the very company she built from nothing. Her name was hidden from everyone in that building for a reason, and in exactly 6 minutes, careers would be destroyed. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that touch the heart. Ava Monroe sat with perfect posture, her hands folded calmly over her purse while humiliation burned quietly inside her chest. She had learned long ago that power did not always need to scream. Sometimes power waited, sometimes power watched. Whoa. And sometimes power allowed people to reveal exactly who they truly were. The massive headquarters of Monroe Global Tech stood in downtown Chicago like a monument to success. 42 floors of innovation, luxury, and influence. Every inch of the building reflected Ava's sacrifices. She had built it after surviving a childhood most people would never recover from. Ava grew up in a poor neighborhood on the south side of Chicago with her mother, Denise, a hospital janitor who worked night shifts. Her father disappeared before she was born. Their apartment roof leaked whenever it rained. Winter meant sleeping in coats when the heat was cut off. Her mother often skipped meals so Ava could eat. But Denise carried one dream bigger than poverty. She constantly told Ava that education was their way out. When Ava was 13, her mother collapsed while cleaning hospital floors after working 18 straight hours. The doctors discovered severe heart failure caused by stress and exhaustion. Denise died 3 months later. At 14 years old, Ava became an orphan. She bounced between foster homes where she was treated like free labor. In one home, she was told that girls like her should focus on surviving, not dreaming. Another foster parent laughed when Ava said she wanted to own a company someday, but pain became fuel. She studied in public libraries until closing time. She earned scholarships. She graduated from college at the top of her class in software engineering. Then she launched a small cybersecurity company from her apartment with a laptop, borrowed money, and relentless determination. Investors laughed at her. Some refused meetings the moment they saw her. Others told her she lacked the look of a CEO. One investor actually suggested she bring a white male partner to make her business appear more stable. Ava walked out and never looked back. 10 years later, Monroe Global Tech became worth nearly $4 billion. And yet, despite her success, Ava never forgot where she came from. She funded scholarships for underprivileged girls. She built homeless shelters. She paid medical bills for struggling families anonymously. And she frequently visited her own company branches undercover to understand how ordinary employees were treated. That morning, she decided to surprise headquarters after receiving anonymous complaints about executive misconduct, discrimination, and workplace bullying. She dressed simply, arrived without security, and instructed her assistant not to announce her arrival. She wanted the truth, and the truth arrived quickly. The receptionist barely looked up when Ava approached. She assumed Ava was there for an interview and told her to wait. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. Several white executives entered after her and were immediately welcomed. Coffee was offered. Doors were opened. Smiles were given freely. Ava remained invisible. When she politely reminded the receptionist she had an appointment with the executive board, the woman sighed dramatically and said the leadership team was very busy with important matters. Then her eyes scanned was modest handbag. She leaned closer and whispered something that made Ava's stomach twist. She told Ava she should probably lower her expectations because executive roles required polish and sophistication. Ava remained silent. Then she noticed something worse. Through the glass walls, executives were mocking lower-level staff. One young black employee entered the room with documents and accidentally dropped papers. The executives laughed. One of them muttered that diversity hires were becoming too expensive. Ava felt her heartbeat quicken. Then she saw a janitor quietly cleaning nearby. The elderly man moved slowly with a limp. One executive stormed out and yelled at him for vacuuming too loudly. The old man apologized repeatedly while executives laughed again. Ava recognized the janitor's name tag. Walter. Her breathing stopped. Walter had once worked with her mother at that same hospital decades earlier. He had secretly brought Denise meals when money was tight. After her mother died, Walter often checked on young Ava. He had been one of the only adults who showed her kindness. And now he was being humiliated in her building. That was when Ava stood up. The receptionist smirked, assuming Ava was finally leaving. Instead, Ava walked directly toward the boardroom. Security moved toward her. Then her personal assistant rushed off the elevator with legal teams behind her. Ha! The entire lobby froze. The assistant's voice thundered through the floor. She announced that everyone should stand because the founder and CEO of Monroe Global Tech had arrived. Faces turned pale instantly. Coffee cups shook in trembling hands. The same executives who laughed moments earlier now looked like men standing on collapsing ice. The receptionist nearly fainted. Ava slowly entered the boardroom. No one dared breathe. She placed a folder on the table. Inside were months of employee complaints, discrimination reports, hidden financial misconduct records, and surveillance footage. She had been investigating quietly for months. Today simply confirmed everything. One executive tried blaming stress. Another claimed misunderstanding. One begged for mercy because he had children. Ava listened without emotion. Then she looked at Walter standing nervously by the door. She walked over and hugged him tightly. The old man began crying. So did several employees watching from outside. We've told everyone that this man once fed her grieving mother when she had nothing. She said true greatness is measured by how people treat those who can do nothing for them. Then she fired 6 executives immediately. The receptionist was terminated. HR leadership was replaced. Legal investigations began that same afternoon. But Ava wasn't finished. She promoted the young employee who had been mocked after discovering she was working 2 jobs to support her younger siblings. She gave Walter a full retirement package worth more money than he had ever imagined. She renamed the Employee Scholarship Fund after her mother, and she created mandatory leadership empathy training throughout the company. News of the incident spread nationwide. People praised Ava's courage. But what moved the public most was what happened 3 days later. Ava returned to her old neighborhood. She visited the abandoned apartment building where she grew up. Standing in front of broken windows and cracked walls, she announced plans to transform the area into affordable housing, job centers, and educational facilities. Residents cried as construction plans were revealed. For Ava, success meant nothing if she forgot the people still trapped in the life she escaped. Months later, Walter attended the opening ceremony of the Denise Monroe Community Center. He sat in the front row wearing a new suit Ava bought him. Wow. As children played nearby and families celebrated, Walter whispered that Denise would be proud. Oz looked at the sky and smiled through tears. For the first time in years, the little girl who once slept in a freezing apartment finally felt peace. She realized revenge would have been easy. But restoring dignity was far more powerful. And if this story touched your heart, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us humanity still matters. Before this story ends, comment below. Kindness always comes back. Because sometimes the people society overlooks are the very people who hold the power to change everything. And sometimes 6 minutes is all it takes for justice to arrive. 6 months after the dramatic firing of Monroe Global Tech's executives, Ava Monroe believed the storm had finally passed. She was wrong. The headlines had praised her as a fearless billionaire who stood against discrimination. Social media called her a hero. Employees celebrated the company's new culture reforms. Applications to work at Monroe Global Tech doubled. For the first time in years, Ava felt like her company was becoming the compassionate empire she had always dreamed of building. But success often creates enemies. And some people never forgive public humiliation. It started with a late-night phone call. Ava was sitting alone in her penthouse office overlooking Chicago's skyline when her chief legal officer called with panic in his voice. A confidential internal file had been leaked to the media. The documents falsely accused Ava of insider trading, tax fraud, and secretly using company charity funds for personal investments. Within hours, news outlets exploded with scandal reports. Stock prices dropped. Investors demanded answers. Board members panicked. And social media turned vicious overnight. The same people who praised Ava days earlier were now calling her a fraud. Comment below right now if you believe the truth always comes to light in the end. Ava sat silently in her office as news anchors tore apart her reputation. She had spent her life fighting to be taken seriously, and now everything she built was being attacked by lies. Then came the worst blow of all. Federal investigators arrived at Monroe Global Tech headquarters with warrants. Employees watched in horror as agents carried boxes of company records from the building. Cameras flashed outside. Reporters screamed questions. Iva's face appeared on every television screen in America. She could barely breathe. That night, she visited the Denise Monroe Community Center after everyone had gone home. She sat alone in the dark gymnasium where children normally laugh during basketball games. For the first time in years, she cried uncontrollably. She thought about her mother, about Walter, about every child depending on her scholarships. What would happen if everything disappeared? Then someone quietly entered the gym. It was Walter. Though officially retired, he still visited the center often. He sat beside Ava without saying much. His aging hands trembled as he passed her a small folded newspaper clipping. It was an old article about her mother from decades earlier. The headline read, "Hospital Janitor Saves Child During Electrical Fire," was stared at it in shock. She had never seen the article before. Walter explained that years before Denise died, she risked her own life to save a trapped child during a hospital fire. She suffered severe smoke damage but never accepted public recognition. Walter looked at Ava with tears in his eyes and reminded her that bravery runs in her blood. Her mother faced fire. Now Ava had to face hers. The next morning, Ava stopped hiding. She called a national press conference. Every major network attended. People expected tears, excuses, maybe even a resignation. Instead, Ava walked onto the stage calm and fearless. Then she revealed something nobody expected. She had been privately investigating missing company funds for nearly a year. After firing those executives months earlier, her cybersecurity team discovered encrypted communications between former executives and a rival corporation. The fired executives wanted revenge. They had created fake financial records and leaked false evidence to destroy Ava and force Monroe Global's stock price to collapse. Their plan was simple: destroy her reputation, then buy her company at a discounted value through secret investors. But they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated the woman they were trying to break. Ava displayed emails, bank transfers, recorded phone calls, everything. The room fell silent. Then federal investigators publicly confirmed they had shifted their investigation toward the former executives. Within days, arrests began. The former CEO replacement, 2 fired executives, and outside conspirators were charged with fraud, corporate sabotage, and conspiracy. The rival company's CEO resigned in disgrace. Monroe Global stock rebounded stronger than before. But what had changed? The scandal made her realize how fragile wealth and power truly were. She began stepping away from luxury. She sold one of her mansions. She donated millions more into education and housing. She started mentoring young Black entrepreneurs who lacked access to investors. Then tragedy struck once again. Walter collapsed during a ceremony at the community center. Doctors revealed he had terminal cancer. Ava was devastated. She spent every possible moment by his side during treatment. Walter, despite his illness, remained peaceful. One evening in his hospital room, he handed Ava a small worn box. Inside was a handwritten letter from her mother. Ava's hand shook as she opened it. The letter had been written shortly before Denise died. Her mother explained that she knew she might not survive her illness. She thanked Walter for promising to watch over Ava after her death. Then came words that shattered Ava completely. Her mother wrote that success means nothing if your heart becomes unreachable. She told Ava to always make room at her table for forgotten people, to forgive when possible, to fight when necessary, and to never let the world convince her she was less than extraordinary. Ava cried harder than she had in years. Weeks later, Walter passed away peacefully. Thousands attended his funeral. Business leaders, former janitors, children from the community center, single mothers, scholarship students. He had quietly touched more lives than anyone realized. At the funeral, Ava made a shocking announcement. She was stepping down as CEO of Monroe Global Tech. The crowd gasped, but Ava smiled through tears. She explained she wasn't quitting, she was evolving. She appointed a diverse leadership team made up of people who rose from ordinary positions within the company. Then she launched the Walter and Denise Foundation, a global organization focused on housing, education, and job opportunities for forgotten communities. Years later, Ava stood in front of thousands at the opening of a new international youth center built in South Africa. A little girl approached her after the ceremony. The girl wore worn shoes and held a notebook. She quietly told Ava she wanted to become a billionaire someday. Ava knelt and smiled. She told the little girl not to chase billions, chase purpose. Because money can build buildings, but purpose changes lives forever. The little girl hugged her tightly, and Ava looked at the sky once more, thinking of her mother and Walter, two ordinary people who shaped an extraordinary future. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to support stories that inspire kindness and justice. And before you go, comment below, a purpose over power, because real wealth isn't found in bank accounts. It's found in the lives you leave better behind.